How's it going, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we have plenty to deep dive in our latest Big Mets update segment, that being April 18th, 2025, but I'm recording this the night prior like I usually do, as the Mets concluded a nice Game 1 victory to kickstart their second homestand of the year, this time by a final score of 4-1 against the St. Louis Cardinals. And we broke down everything that you need to know from my initial reaction, analysis, inning by inning, all the key takeaways, and then some in our post-game coverage this past night. To the thousands of you guys that already saw it, but to the ones who haven't that are interested, please make sure to check it out after watching this video or at some point at your earliest convenience, because in this Big Mets updates video, we're going to further expand on some of those key takeaways, mainly headlined by guys in Griffin Canning and a guy that I really want to shed some more light on, and Brett the Hitman Baty. Not only are we going to talk about those key takeaways, but we're also going to get into what is the latest with the Mets and their starter health, including guys like Frankie Montas, as Carlos Mendoza spoke to the media this past day, as we have a key update on Montas that we will share from Mendoza's mouth shortly, along with what is happening with Gilbert, one of the Mets' top outfield prospects. We have some key news to get into on his front, and ultimately, what does this mean for his potential path to the major leagues as soon as this season, along with the latest on Jeff McNeil, as he had his first start in a hot minute in the center field position that we saw in his latest rehab outing. So we're going to expand as to how McNeil fared, and ultimately, what will his role be for this Mets team when he arrives back from his rehab stint. That paired with the latest on the prospect front for our nightly prospect breakdown that we get into is what we're going to do right here, right now. So thank you guys kindly for smashing that like and subscribe on as you first chime in, and let me know all your initial reactions to everything that we have to break down in the comments down below. And thank you so much in advance for doing exactly that. Folks, the Mets season has officially started, which means it's time to shout out our amazing sponsor here at SeatGeek, because not only are they going to have me covered, but they're going to have each and every one of you covered with all of your ticketing needs throughout the course of the 162. Because it's one thing to be the #1 rated ticketing app with over 28 million downloads and 70,000+ active events to choose from, whether it's Mets games, different team games, whether you're looking at concert tickets, comedy show tickets, anything ticket related, SeatGeek has you covered. And just to give you guys further proof, I have been utilizing SeatGeek well before we actually had them here as a ticketing sponsor. And the best part of it all, everybody, is that they have a grading scale, a true system in their app that's slim to none, the best in the game in my humble opinion. As you guys see beside me, we're going to take a look at some future Mets games, specifically against the Philadelphia Phillies right around mid to late April. And as you guys see the ticket prices, you see a range of 1 to 10 on the scale, meaning how good it is for a bang for your buck, and a color coordination scale, meaning if it's green, that you should really definitely get those tickets because it's a great bang for your buck. And if it's red, if it's more in the rating of 1 to 5, they're probably overpriced, and you could probably do better elsewhere, still in the SeatGeek app, but somewhere else when you're looking to acquire tickets in said app. So that's what I love so much about them. They make it so easy, so simplistic to give me a great idea as to what I should be pouncing on, especially when some awesome deals present themselves throughout the course of the 162 there in the SeatGeek app. So what does this mean, everybody? It means that if you haven't already, you got to check out our awesome friends, because they're going to have you covered, again, with Mets tickets or whatever you need ticket-wise throughout the entire course of the year, which is why I implore each and every one of you, if you haven't already, to check out our amazing promo code at WardyNYM by clicking the link down below the description of this video. Shout out to SeatGeek, as always, for being an amazing sponsor on the platform, everybody. But seriously, use WardyNYM as your promo code. Once you click it, it's hyperlinked too, so if you have the app downloaded, it's going to tell you automatically that that percentage was added, and you're going to get some money off your next ticketing purchase, all thanks to our awesome friends here at SeatGeek. Shout out to them once more. We appreciate them greatly. Alrighty, folks, so let's get into our first topics of the day that has everything to do with the Mets and their latest 4-1 victory. And I'm not going to spend all this time getting into all the details because, again, that's what the postgame show's for. But let's highlight briefly, just for another second, what was so great about Griffin Canning and his latest outing. Because it cannot be understated that for Griffin Canning, a guy who has just under a 5 career ERA, now sits with a 3.43 ERA in his first 4 starts as a New York Metropolitan. This comes after not even cracking the Atlanta Braves, as he was in their organization last. And as I stated in last night's postgame show, and I'll reiterate it here, one man's trash is another man's treasure. That's the case in Griffin Canning in this Mets pitching lab, doing right by him, reworking his arsenal. And I honestly have to give you even further credit where credit's due, because the big bugaboo with Griffin Canning throughout his career has been his heavy fastball usage, utilizing it 60% of the time or so last year, giving up more bombs than any other eligible starter out of the American League, where it makes sense. It's always batting practice if you're an LA Angel, because they don't know pitching development if it's smack them across the face. That's why they always rush guys up, and that's why they always find themselves not making postseason play. But in the case of Griffin Canning, now here with the New York Mets working this pitching lab, he actually utilized that fastball a good amount this past night, leading to a great start for him. Roughly 45% of the time while he was sitting 93 to 95 plus. But what was most notable about that fastball that I stayed last night as well is how great he was with his location. A lot of the pitches were down in the zone, and then he was working way up there out of the zone to get that chase, really deviating the hitters that we saw with the eye level, going from, say, a slider down away to a fastball up and in. I loved his work. His not only his work ethic, but his makeup of his arsenal with his 5 to 6 pitch mix and this one. Because not only did he have the four seam working right, the slider didn't look too great in his first couple times he threw it. Then he started getting more of a groove, which was nice to see. And the cutter was playing up later in the game as well. As he said it himself in his post-game presser that we played in our post-game show this past night, he was really happy with the turnout and that this could be kind of the mold for what can be expected from Canning when everything is going right, and obviously goes in hand with the matchups that he has. But for Griffin Canning, who didn't look too sharp in his previous start that we saw against the Athletics, now he basically has his own Michael Jordan flu game out here, just a day or two removed from dealing with an illness, as was the case with Jesse Winker in the previous series against the Athletics before they went to Minnesota to face the Twins and sadly faltered 2 out of 3 there. Canning helped the Mets get back right on track there to kickstart what is a fantastic homestand stretch for the Mets, where they have 7 games, including this victory, and have 6 games left between the Cardinals and the Phillies at minimum before they go back on the road again. But I would love to hear from you guys. How impressed were you with Griffin Canning in his latest outing? Because he had everything working, leading to those 8 strikeouts, and the fact that he was at 70 pitchers or so throughout 4 innings and still gave us 6 innings of work, going beyond 100 innings. You know, if David Peterson isn't going to lead the team in innings this year, I will not at all be surprised if Griffin Canning falls in that category. Unless he actually falls out of the Mets rotation. One guy's in Montas and Manaea that we're going to talk about here shortly. A comeback towards the end of May, if not early June. Unless he really falls off a cliff by then, where he's not even utilized as a starter, but more so as a reliever swingman fit, Canning's going to eat innings because he ate 170 plus last year for the Angels. We know he's a workhorse, but now it's a matter of not being so much quantity on the innings, but quality in the starts that you're getting. A great step in the right direction for Griffin Canning. So let me know your further thoughts in the comments down below on him, and thank you guys for doing exactly that. Because now let's get into, in my opinion, the most impressive player, not named Mr. Smile and Francisco Lindor this past night, and that has to be Brett Baty, guys. Listen. Like each and every one of you, I was not in love with the idea of Luis Angel Acuna riding the bench after he had yet another productive day with that RBI, that game-tying hit there. What a couple outs that we saw in that series finale against the Twins when the Mets rallied but sadly followed short in the end. Brett Baty had himself a good game that series finale with a couple hits going oppo and pulling the baseball. Mind you, Baty also had his first career triple a couple games before that in his previous start out there that he saw against the Athletics. Now Baty gained the start yet again for this Mets team, this time at second base instead of the hot corner, while Vientos got back in the lineup and went oppo taco, which was so great to see. Baty is now finally starting to take advantage of the opportunities given to him, and it couldn't come at a more pivotal time, because with Jeff McNeil turning the corner and will be back with this Mets team within the next week or so more than likely, it's imperative to see Baty what he can do at the major league level. That way it forces and ties Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns' hands to not only have a good problem on their hands, but ultimately try to consider Baty staying on the roster even when McNeil returns from injury, because there is a route where that does make sense, and the immediate route is to have Jose Alzcar immediately sent down when Jeff returns, and then to platoon multiple guys in the outfield that we're going to talk about more in just another couple minutes. But in the interim, Brett Baty right now, a 2-for-3 game, pulling that double that we saw, which was so great, and then a 2-out opposite field RBI single that kickstarted his offense, and this 4-1 victory for the Mets. At the time, that made it 2-0 for the Mets, and then Baty and then Tyrone Taylor were both scored thanks to Francisco Lindor having a big brain mentality like the MVP and captain that he is for this team, in a way where he's keeping guys between first and second as he's saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Yelling to Taylor to get over there to bolt it home. He does, and that scored both the Mets runs there to increase their lead at the time 4-0. But Brett Baty, if he can keep this up, if he can actually showcase his ability to handle MLB pitching and actually have quality at-bats the way he's finally starting to do that, finally looking like more the guy that we saw spring training, where he tore the cover off the ball the entire time, going oppo, pulling the ball, going center, spreading for all fields. Baty is finally starting to snap out of his funk that was horrendous to begin the season, and is going to give us more production along these lines. There is absolutely a world where he could actually find himself staying on this roster. And as David Stearns has said it himself time and time again, and I will reiterate this once more, you know, this is a results-oriented league, right? So in order for Baty to stay, he just needs to play his way to stay. It's as simple as that. He needs to take advantage of the starts he gets. He needs to take advantage, should he come in a pinch-hitting role and late-game situation, or just as a defensive replacement there at either second or third base. Point is that Baty, while yes, the clock is ticking for him and his Mets tenure, is now coming at a great time for him, finally starting to blossom and look like the Baty that we were expecting more of when the season first began, north of 3 weeks ago now. But Mets fans, I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Where do you stand on the Brett Baty front? Do you think that this is kind of fool's gold and that we shouldn't get ourselves all hyped up? We know that this is a situation that's going to inevitably lead to him being sent down sooner than later. Or do you think that there's actually a world where he could stay on this roster should he continue to step up with the opportunities given to him from Carlos Mendoza? And are you in favor or against the opportunities coming at the sacrifice of a guy like Acuna riding the bench for some games? Because I have to be honest, as much as I'm impressed with what Brett Baty's doing right now, and it is great to see, truly feels like there's a monkey being taken off his back as we speak, I'm not in favor of taking Luis Angel Acuna, who is an absolute Swiss Army knife between his great base running, fastest player in the game in the 99th percentile in sprint speed per baseball savant, then his great defense at second base. Not that Baty isn't a good defender either, because he is for the most part. I have not been griping too much outside that botched throw there to finish off the Mets' last homestand against the Marlins, where he couldn't make that routine throw in the infield that led to a couple runs scored unearned on Tyler McGill. With that exception, Baty has been that too, but Acuna has the speed, he's a quality in his at-bats for the most part, and he's getting better each time out there. I don't want to see Acuna's development hindered at all because he, say, gets sporadic playing time. That's something out of his control, when every time he does have control, every time he isn't there, he's a difference maker. That's what's been the case with Acuna. So if there's a route to make Acuna and Baty work on this team, I'm all for it, but I'm curious to see what exactly Carlos Mendoza is going to do on that from everybody. And you know what? I think it's perfect that we talk about Carlos Mendoza here, because now let's pivot into talking about what Carlos Mendoza has envisioned for this Mets team, specifically when we talk about guys and Luis Angel Acuna, because this is what he had to say.
Would you anticipate seeing Acuna in center field anytime soon?
We'll see. You know, he's not in the lineup today, and he's going to spend a lot of time in there with Antoine. We also have Asokar here, can provide some, can give us a game or play there. But we are preparing Acuna for a potential start if we need him to. He's playing well, so he's earning opportunities here.
I love the fact that Mendoza said the following: he's playing well, he's earning opportunities here. Exactly. If you continue to play well, the Mets have to absolutely put you in the lineup because you're playing well. So I'm happy that the Mets managed to do game one of this second homestand of the season without Acuna playing at all, outside of being a pinch runner for Baty later in the game after he ripped that double. So I would like to share some context. I'm not opposed to that either, but if Acuna isn't going to get a start and the Mets still win, I'm really happy. And I'm even more happy that Carlos Mendoza reaffirmed this past day exactly what I've been telling you guys on the platform. And it's the following topics. It's one, Brandon Nimmo is in fact going to be getting center field reps. It was reaffirmed from Mendoza how comfortable they are with him there, and especially based on matchups where they want to go lefty heavy by saying having Jesse Winker, and then when McNeil's back from injury, especially one of the two there in left field, maybe one at DH, and then you have Nimmo there in center. I know when it comes to Brandon Nimmo, the discussion has not been a happy discourse for the most part, as many of you guys don't love the idea of Nimmo, who's been inducing a lot of ground ball outs that we've seen, forcing his hand a bit, swinging a little too early in his counts, not being the OBP guy that we hope. And while he's hitting for power, we know Nimmo has power. That makes sense in your 4-5 spot. It's a problem when he's not producing with runners in scoring position the way that he, like most of this Mets lab, has labored to begin the season. And we will certainly talk more on Nimmo throughout the course of the week like we do in our post-game segment each night. But understanding that Nimmo is still an everyday player that Mendoza reaffirmed, and we can't forget that he's on the big contract for a reason. Yes, I have my rightful concerns and judgments if he gets any consistent playing time in center. Not that Nimmo didn't do it for years, but more so there's a reason why we've taken him out of center and put him more in the corner the past year and a half. I don't know exactly how much the Mets can toy there without something going awry. But when it comes to defensive stability, Nimmo is obviously your best center field option that isn't Tyrone Taylor right now with Jose Siri down with injury, and the Mets clearly don't want to put Jose Alzcar in the lineup more than they would have to besides a defensive late game replacement, maybe a one-off of getting a start there because of the simple fact that they just want to give Tyrone Taylor some rest and maybe didn't want to play some other guys that aren't going to be as proficient defensively there. Alzcar has great speed. He certainly has an element to his game that is appealing for the Mets in the interim. With Jose Siri being lost, he has similarities to Siri in the case of defense and in the case there of the speed on the bags, but offense is even lower bar, which is saying a lot because Siri, we're lucky if he's saying the Mendoza line or so. Point that I'm trying to make here when it comes to the Mets outfield configuration is that Mendoza reaffirmed this past day that yes, they're more than comfortable when Nimmo gains center field reps. Should they do that? They will do that based on certain matchups. Secondly, when we evaluate Luis Angel Acuna, yes, just like how he was toyed in Syracuse last year in center field, and may happen again just because of the fact that the Mets' hands are forced, they need to put him out there. And all I hope is that if they do give him center field reps, that it's not the demise of his offensive output. Because if there's one thing that we saw this past year, and I reaffirmed this in our Big Mets Updates video from a day ago with special guest Samantha Croston. Check that out in case you guys haven't already. Really fun discussion, especially with Samantha. But we broke down specifically how Acuna got a decent amount of reps in center field last year in Syracuse. But what did we also see? Underwhelming offensive production. Fairly underwhelming offensive production. And the last thing that I would ever want to see is Acuna, who's been red hot, now find himself playing a position that he hasn't been doing that much this year. And then that puts a hindrance on his offensive output because of the fact that he doesn't have consistency defensively where he's playing each game. And that throws him off mentally a little bit on the offensive end. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but just something I'm bearing in mind with this evaluation. But I'm also bearing in mind what the Mets may be doing on the Jeff McNeil front, because Carlos Mendoza knows that McNeil is going to be an option for them, and he's very versatile, and it won't be shocking if McNeil finds himself getting center field reps, especially knowing that they purposely are having Jeff get center field reps now in this past night's game for the Port St. Lucie Mets that we're about to get into. Jeff will be moved, that we will see to a different team, just maybe not Syracuse because of weather, but he's going to be moved up, whether that is to the Cyclones or to the Rummel Ponies within the next day or so. And the next couple games he plays, I believe actually will be more at second base. Same way with Francisco Alvarez and his next games out there in rehab. He'll be catching full duties on back-to-back nights, and then from there, the Mets will reevaluate and see if he's ready to get the call back up with his team, which can again happen as soon as towards the end of the weekend, heading into next week. So Alvarez and McNeil are on the cusp of returning to this Mets team within the next week's span, so it's important to see how a guy, McNeil especially, is going to do. And this is how Jeff McNeil performed, everybody, that we saw for St. Lucie Mets. There he is. You guys see the highlight? There is Jeff McNeil making the slide, going all the way in left field territory. He's like, I got this, buddy. Don't worry about it. And he makes that nice slide and grab. McNeil did go 0 in this game offensively after having a hit or so in his previous game, but nice to see him commanding center field without a problem as he played 6 innings there for the St. Lucie Mets. And I would like to clarify, is only in St. Lucie still for his rehab because of weather and how inconsistent it's been on the other levels on the East Coast. Otherwise, he would have already been moved up the way that a guy that Alvarez has been moved up as well, but that's more so because of the fact that he's had some games he's been able to catch, whereas McNeil, they want to make sure that he's getting the proper both outfield and infield reps. So Mets fans, I want to hear from you. What do you think is going to be the best outfield configuration for the Mets? Because in my opinion, I think the following is going to happen at this current rate. When Jeff McNeil is back, the Mets are going to send down Jose Alzcar, and they're going to keep Baty and Acuna in the lineup on the roster. And the lineup is going to vary day by day. Hayden Senger is going to be automatically sent down once Francisco Alvarez is activated. Not a slate on Senger, whose defense has looked great to start the year, has poked some hits as well. So he's been more than impressive, I would say, for a guy that, is working in Whole Foods in the offseason there as a minor league batter who's been in the organization for a hot minute now. But Senger, a great story, but I think that'll be coming to an end over this next week because we need our reinforcements back, that being in Jeff McNeil, as well as what we've seen there in Francisco Alvarez. And when we speak of reinforcements, we have to focus not just on the offense, but also on the pitching, because you guys can see here, Sean Manaea was running and gained some pregame reps this past day there. We know that Manaea has finally started to toss. Things are looking good with the oblique. God forbid, hopefully that was the last there of the setbacks, and there's no more, I should say. And in the case of Sean Manaea, it's a step in the right direction, as he again is expected to return this Mets team by the end of May, if not early June. And not only on Sean Manaea, but let's talk about his buddy who's expected to return right around the same time, that being in Frankie Montas. This is what Carlos Mendoza had to say.
And also just on Montas.
75 feet now. Yeah, clear, feeling good, and now he's just going through the progression.
And also just
So a quick update there from Mendoza, but a positive one. Great to see that he's starting to play catch, tossing from 75 feet. From there, the Mets will obviously get him more of a setting to start to handle bullpens. Then once the bullpens are cleared, looking good to go, he'll start to face live batters. Then after the live batter simulations look good to go, then he will start to actually get into rehab outings, which is, again, why it's a lengthy process, as frustrating as it is. That's just the nature of the game here with starters. You can't rush them, because see how the Mets felt like that they had everything working well with Sean Manaea there with his oblique. Then he had a setback, and Sean should have been returning the Mets sooner to this date than what will now be, again, a month plus later from now, towards the end of May, early June. But no less, I'm looking forward to not only seeing Manaea, the Samoan southpaw, back in this rotation, as the Mets pitching has been far from their problem this year, so the thought of it getting better is an exciting thought. And Frankie Montas, who I really am excited to see, because he's not just an innings eater when healthy, but he does have solid stuff, and he does have life on his fastball, and the Mets signed him to be the Luis Severino replacement for a reason, so I'm hoping that we could actually see a healthy, good-looking Frankie Montas to eat some innings for us and be 10 times better than what he ever was during his injury-plagued stint with the Yankees. And I understand that the commonality between the Yankees and the Mets with Frankie Montas isn't that he just played for both, but that he's been injury-plagued with both teams, in the case of the Mets, before he even towed the rubber for the first official game. But now, guys, let's go from talking about all the latest health updates to getting into the prospect front, because there are some exciting things going on with our guy in Drew Gilbert, especially Jet Williams and others. So let's pivot now into our true prospect report. Let's do exactly that. Also, I want to show you guys this real quick. See Mike Piazza, see him rocking the New York or Nowhere collab that dropped this past day. Everything like sold out already on New York or Nowhere's site. I'm sure you could get things from either MLB Shop or other sites out there. But guys, I'm usually not the type to go out of my way to get too much Mets merch, just because I already have plenty to utilize, one, and two, this stuff isn't cheap. But I did selfishly splurge for once, and I don't do this too often. I did it, last time I did anything of significance was I got myself a Juan Soto jersey when the Mets first landed Soto. I've since given away 2 Juan Soto jerseys on the platform and a Juan Soto shirt jersey just for our subscriber goals on the platform, because every time we hit a new 1,000 subscribers, so the next time it's 33K, I'm giving away a Mets jersey of whatever player you guys want to one lucky subscriber in a future live show. Just gotta be subscribed and watching the content. It is that easy. But as you guys see here, Piazza's rocking the fit, and I'm sorry, I needed that jacket. I think it's sick. I absolutely love it. And I don't have anything in my collection like that Mets related. That's that true kind of varsity jacket look that looks nice and comfortable. So I'm going to be rocking that jacket, that bad boy, plenty there at Mets games I'll be attending this season. So anytime that you see Wardy on a late night there at Citi Field, either if it's a frigid night, before we hit the peak of summer, or some cold summer nights, or certainly there as we get into September and October and hopefully a nice playoff run, I'm going to be rocking that thing plenty. I got myself a Mets hat too. That's the normal royal blue Mets hat. That's his New York or Nowhere on the side. I never wear like the traditional Mets hat either. So I was like, you know what? It's time to make a change. Let's start to actually rock the royal blue Mets hat for a change. So we got that as well. Cannot wait to have those in my possession. But thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right, now let's get on to the prospects here. And what we see on the prospect end, everybody. There we go. Drew Gilbert. And his first game in Syracuse this year,
countdown.
Not his first game of his career in Syracuse, but his first game this season. Just got called up there from the 7-day IL there, coming from Port St. Lucie. He and Dominic Hamill looked very sharp that we saw in the Syracuse Mets outing. They won this game 2-0, and Drew Gilbert had himself his first hit. Why is this important? Why is this noteworthy? It's because given Jose Siri's injury, there is clearly a path greater than ever for someone in the farm to potentially step up within the next month or so to actually give the Mets a good problem on their hands, where maybe they will consider Drew Gilbert. I will like to clarify that it's clearly on the outside looking in that Drew Gilbert is with the Mets anytime soon. But all it takes is for Drew Gilbert to tear the cover off the ball, have a red hot next month and a half to force the Mets' hand, because his ETA is this season. Jet Williams' ETA is this season to a degree, right? So we know that in the case of the Mets' top prospects, and not only Gilbert, but Jet Williams, who can play both short and center field. He's platooning reps right now with the Rumble Ponies in Double-A. The Mets certainly are in a position to consider at least one of these kids at some point this year, either with inevitable injuries happening, inconsistencies, or what have you. So not that anything is a lock on the Drew Gilbert front, but him in Syracuse is a huge step to get him closer to the bigs. And the path right now has everything to do with what works, or really what doesn't work for the most part, at center field over the next month and a half. And my question to each and every one of you Mets fans is the following. Could Drew Gilbert play his way up to the Mets this season? And if so, do you think it'll happen in the first half or likely sometime in the second half of the season because of either injuries, inconsistencies, or he just plays so damn well that you say, okay, he's got to be with the team now. We got to give him a shot. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments down below, and thank you guys again for that as well. But Drew Gilbert was notable that we saw there, everybody. Let's also get into, as you see there, Jack Weniger looking fantastic through 3 starts this year in Double A. Shout out to Michael Mayer, Mets Rise, for posting this. 15 innings of 7 hit, 2 earned run, 4 walk, 22 strikeout ball with a 1.2 ERA. Weniger has been one of the most impressive arms in the Mets minor league so far this year, in my opinion. We talked about him every start he's had, and he's looked pretty much better and better for the most part. He has all the makings, in my opinion, to be a pitcher that's going to skyrocket in the farm the way that we saw guys like Brandon Sproat, Jonathan, and to a degree Nolan McLean this past year. All exciting prospects still, but really encouraging to see Jack Weniger have a great start to the year for the Rumble Ponies. Now, Jet Williams also looked really, really good too. Let me just see if I have this pulled up or not. If I don't, it's no worries. But Jet Williams did rip himself his first. You know what? We're going to do it. Let's just type it. We're going to do this live while we're doing the recording. Why? Because why not? It's not going to take you too long, and you guys are patient enough. If you're already watching 25 minutes in the show, you can watch another 2 seconds, as you guys can see here. There he is. There he is, everybody.
One pitch from Fosnot is lifted into right center field and hit well. Pineda going back, looking up, and that ball is gone. Onto the veranda of the Renders Event Center. Jet Williams again gives Binghamton a run in the first inning to take the early lead.
So Jet Williams was fantastic yesterday that we saw rip himself an RBI double, and then he was driven in by Francisco Alvarez. Now we come to find out today, Jet Williams rips a bomb, no doubter there to lead things off here for the Rumble Ponies, but he did start at shortstop in this game. I would like to clarify that. But encouraging stuff there for one of our top prospects on the offensive front. Jet the Met Williams, excited to see if he'll crack this team at any point this year or certainly sometime in 2026. But to further expand on the prospect report, everybody, let's start here with the Port St. Lucie Mets. And outside of McNeil's 0 game, offensively, there wasn't anything to show. They lost 6-1. Davison Gutierrez had another hit. He's looked great at catcher. The Venezuelan catching prospect for the Mets is now batting .333 with a .688 OPS. Marco Vargas at DH, who I really hope can finally jump beyond what we saw there in St. Lucie this year, because he's moved laterally at best since the Mets acquired him 2 years ago at the trade deadline for David Robertson. At the time, he was an exciting prospect, but now he's kind of moved laterally, so I'm interested to see what the future is for him. Gutierrez, though, looking good. Vargas, .375 average, .974 OPS. Ewing, even though he didn't have himself a hit in this one, .415 average with over 1,000 OPS. He's looked great. And pitching-wise, nothing that I feel the need to get into there, which leads us then to the Brooklyn Cyclones as they won their latest game by a final score 7-3 over the Ironbirds. And the notables on the offensive end were Boston Barrow leading off at shortstop, ripping his first double of the season. We saw Jacob Reimer at the hot corner rip his 5th double of the year. And Mr. Suero at catcher continues to tear the cover off the ball with his 6th double of the season already. Suero's now batting .351 with a 1,300 plus OPS. This kid is going to skyrocket in the minor leagues for the Mets as a catching prospect. And if things continue in this trend, folks, everyone is going to know who Suero is in no time. Really impressing to say the least so far this year. My goodness. Really, really good stuff. Pitching-wise, not a whole lot to get into there. So now let's get into the Rumble Ponies as they won 6-2 over the Fightin' Phils in Reading. And the notables on the offensive end were Jet Williams' home run that we got into there, everybody. And that was his 2nd this season. So I apologize if I said earlier that it was his 1st. I misspoke there. Schwartz had himself a home run as well, too, that we saw. Kevin Parada ripped his 2nd double of the year. Schwartz had a double, too. Nick Morabito didn't have a hit, but that's okay. Ryan Clifford went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Not ideal. Love Ryan Clifford. Big home run swing. Want to see more of him this year. Schwartz at third base looks good. 400 average, 1,700 OPS this season. Not too shabby. Offensively, there really isn't anything else to get into outside LaRusso, 1 for 3, who now is batting .308 with a .934 OPS. Pitching-wise, Jack Weniger, 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts with that 1.2 ERA. Guzman in relief looks solid, 1.2 scoreless with 3 strikeouts. Trey McLaughlin looks solid as well with a scoreless inning and a pair of strikeouts. Parsons did allow 1 run there, is now at a 2.45 ERA with a pair of Ks this year in the minor leagues in Double-A, which now leads us to our final report, which is Syracuse as they won 2-0 and was headlined by Billy McKinney ripping his 2nd double of the year and Nico Goodrum ripping a double as well. Goodrum was 1 for 3. We saw Gilbert 1 for 4 that we saw with the run scored. Billy McKinney 2 for 3 with the RBI. Celestino 1 for 4, who the Mets were pondering to consider instead of Jose Oscar for a call, but that didn't happen. Donovan Walton had himself a hit. Dominic Hamill went 3 shutty, coming back off the injured list there in his rehab on the 7-day IL. 5 strikeouts, no earned runs, 2 hits, 1 walk. A great start to the season there for Dominic Hamill. Grant Hartwig finally had a clean outing. He's had not the best start to the year in Syracuse. Chris Davinsky looks solid with a scroll inning of relief. Danel Nunez, who will be back with the Mets sooner than later, just pretty much whenever they need him right now because there is no immediate rush. He had himself 2 walks with 2 Ks in a scroll inning. Ty Adcock went 2 shutty with 3 strikeouts. And Rico Garcia, who's an exciting reliever option that the Mets have in the farm as well, paired with Tyler Zuber and others I like quite a bit. He won 1 shutty with 1 strikeout, down to a 1.59 ERA there for Syracuse. But folks, that's all I got for you on our Big Mets updates front. So thank you kindly for watching. I greatly appreciate that. Let me know all your key takeaways from everything we broke down tonight, from Canning to Baty to Gilbert to Montas to McNeil to Acuna to everything on the prospect report. And I will see you guys all later for probably pregame and postgame live here on the WardyNYM platform as Mets get set for Game 2 against the St. Louis Cardinals in this homestand. Have a great one, folks. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.